How y'all doing? I'm the Watchman, and this right here is entitled "Which Animal Are You?" Which animal are you? And it feels good to be back. I've been gone for a minute, taking care of my little ones, but the Lord impressed me with this one right here. Now, while I've been gone, I've been doing a lot of studying on the sanctuary, which is going to be what our upcoming series will be about. And I've had a request. I had a request from a good friend, Sir Blade. Sir Blade has requested that I do one on the last days and events of the last days. So I will be doing one, squeezing that in there. But anyway, which animal are you? Which animal are you? Let's get right to it. Let's get right to it. And it was funny because this was definitely directed from the Lord, and what I'm going to be doing is comparing two different species of animals, and I'm gonna throw a third one in there at the end. But anyway, let's get right to it. Turning your Bibles with me to Matthew 15. We're going to read Matthew 15 and verse 24. And I like to say, make sure you have a pen or pencil, because there's going to be some verses that I'm just going to jot out and I'm not going to read. And like I always say, do not take my word for it, but read and study for yourself. Never take a man's word for it, especially in this day and time. Read and study for yourself. Always. The truth loves investigation. The truth loves investigation. Let's get into it. Matthew 15, verse 24 reads, "But he answered and said, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. You're already starting to see one of the animals that we're going to be comparing. Now go to Psalms 23. We're going to go to an old chapter that everybody knows. Psalms 23, and I'm going to read it real fast. Psalms 23. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever and ever." Now right here, David is describing his walk with the Lord as being a sheep being led by a shepherd. Now we all know that David was a shepherd, so he knows very well. He knows very well about sheep being led by a shepherd, for he was a shepherd himself. Now there is a great war waging between good and evil, between Christ and his angels and Satan and his angels. Revelation 12:7. In this war, there are only two sides. Two sides, y'all. There is no third party side. Read Matthew 12:30. Let's go to Matthew 12:30 real fast. I wasn't going to read this one, but I think we can squeeze this one in there. Matthew 12:30. Matthew 12:30. And it reads, "He that is not with me is against me. And he that gathereth not with me scattereth abroad." So God is either saying, you either with me or you're against me. Those are the only two sides, with God or with Satan. With God or with Satan. You know, there are only two sides with two different leaders, God and the devil, described by two distinct animals. Here, God's children are described as sheep. We'll read one of them. This is one verse out of many that describes God's children as sheep, but we'll just read one. Psalm 78. We'll go Psalm 78, 52. Psalm 78, and we're going to read verse 52. "But made his own people to go forth like sheep, and guided them in the wilderness like a flock." Now, we've all know that God describes us as sheep. Like, Watchman, where are you coming from? I'm telling you, when the Lord hit me with this comparison, I was like, wow. When I actually studied and got into it. But you're about to see why. Okay, now that's just a few verses out of many that distinctly describe God's people as sheep. Now, there's two sides. God's side described as sheep. God is the shepherd. His people are sheep. Then you have the side of the devil. Let's go to First Peter. Go to First Peter 5. First Peter 5, and we're going to read verse 8. Verse 8. It says, be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour. And it hit me. I'm driving along in my car going to work. I'm like, for real, Father? Sheep? Lions? I won't lie to y'all. I have a tattoo of a lion on my left arm. One that used to be one. It is one of my favorite animals. Our society is breeding people to be like lions. So I said, okay, Father, I'm going to compare the two different animals and their cultures and see why you describe your people as sheep and see why the devil's described as a lion. I'm telling you, y'all, it tripped me out. It tripped me out. Like, all right, like the first one. Like the first. Now, all I did was Google the characteristics of sheep, and all these came up. We're going to go through sheep first. Of course, this is only part one. We probably won't make it to lines to part two, but check it out. All right, the first characteristics of a sheep. They're timid, fearful, and easily panicked. What did God say about man in the last days? Luke 21, verse 26. Men's heart will be failing them for fear. The first characteristic trait is they're timid, fearful, and easily panicked, which goes along with Luke 21, verse 26. The second one, they're dumb, stupid, and gullible. I didn't say these words, y'all. This is straight off Wikipedia. You're just Googling characteristics of sheep. Dumb, stupid, and gullible. Are you seeing why God might be describing man, his children, as sheep? Look at the third characteristic. Very vulnerable to fear, frustration, pest, and hunger. Very vulnerable to fear. Mankind, look at the news. People watch CSI and Law and Order like they eating candy and wonder why they're scared and paranoid all the time. Steady feeding their mind all this killing, murder, and they wonder why they're paranoid 24/7. Anyway, the fifth one, stampede easily, vulnerable to mob psychology. Nah, that's not describing humans. Humans aren't vulnerable to mob psychology. Wow. Wow. Number 6. Little or no means of self-defense, can only run. Now this trait right here is definitely important. And I had to go a little deeper because that's deep. Sheep, the only defense they have is to run. And have you seen them with their little bitty legs? They can't run that fast. But that's their only defense. What did Paul say many times? To flee? Flee from sin? Run from sin? Like Joseph fled from Potiphar's wife? Gotta go into it a little. Now this trait is very important, especially in a day and time where we're taught and told to fight. Stand your ground and flex your muscle. Isn't that what we teach each other? What we're being taught and what we teach our children? It's no coincidence that a sheep's only way of defending himself is to run or flee. When Jesus commands us to flee to the mountains, or when persecuted in one city to flee to another, Matthew 10, verse 23, Matthew 24, verse 16, Mark 13, verse 14, Luke 21:21. All verses where Christ is telling us to flee, to run. Or no coincidence when Paul says, flee fornication, 1 Corinthians 6:18, flee adultery, 1 Corinthians 10:14, flee youthful lust, 2 Timothy 2:22. Wow. We see Jesus and Paul. God is telling us, see how he's telling us to flee, 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 flee. And it hit me like, wow, so it's no coincidence why the lamb's only defense is to flee. They can't stand and fight. They can't, biting and all. They don't do none of that. Their only defense is to run. And we see distinctly that God tells us that we should run, flee, flee. We are not commanded to stand and fight, but told to flee, because as we see in the character of the sheep, running is our only defense. 7. They are easily killed by enemies. How many times did the devil pump us up thinking that we're indestructible to him? When you really look at it, man is easily picked apart. Man is easily killed by enemies. 8. The shepherd is the most effective calming influence. There is no peace like God's peace. When you really look at it, without God, you're going to be stressed. I know I was there. And it's easy. I got to watch every day to make sure I don't go back there at any given moment in time. I have to stay close-knit with God. I'm telling you, I found out that my only peace and joy comes when I'm at the feet of Jesus. For real. And I got that trait from Mary Magdalene. I had to learn to stay at the feet of the cross. Stay at the feet of Jesus. Not at the feet of the cross, but at the feet of Christ. Stay at the feet of Christ. That is the only peace. When I'm not at the feet of Christ, I'm distressed, thinking crazy stuff. All kinds of nonsense start running through the dome. 9. Look, number 9. They're jealous, competitive for dominance. Jealous and competitive for dominance. These little animals who can't fight and can only run got the nerve to be competing. Wow. But jealous and competitive for dominance. Nah, that don't sound like man. Constantly, check number 10 out. Constantly need fresh water and fresh pasture. Do we not need our daily bread? Our daily communion with God? A daily reading of His Word and a daily renewal of the Spirit? Wow. Check number 11. They have very little discernment in choosing food or water. If left to our own, now that's the characteristic right there, is they have very little discernment in choosing food or water. Don't that sound like man? When we talk about spiritual food or food of this world, talking about TV, what's on TV, what's on radio, things we take in. If left to our own selfish nature, won't we eat or drink anything, literally and spiritually? Won't we fall for everything? 12. Their best water source is early morning dew. Wow. That instantly reminded me of like Jesus's habit. Was the best time to commune with God was early in the morning when the day was fresh and new. And that's true. Start your day with the Lord and it'll limit the amount of sins you'll have to ask forgiveness for come nightfall, when you pray before you go to sleep. Just think about it. The more time you spend with God in the morning and throughout your day, not just in the morning, but throughout your day, the less sins you'll have to ask for forgiveness later on at night. Check 13. This is wild right here. They're perverse, stubborn, will insist on their own way, even eating poisonous plants or drinking dirty water. Nah, humans don't put things in their bodies that kill us. Wow. Do we? Like tobacco and alcohol? 14. Easily cast. That means flipped over on their back. Unable to right themselves. They can't pick themselves up. Ooh. Now the video is about to end, but I'm going to come back to this one on part 2. Easily cast, flipped over, and they can't pick themselves up. Only a shepherd their shepherd can pick them up.